Hello from the studio at African Utility Week. I'm Rose Bundock, editor of metering.com, and I'm joined now by Simon Lude, research engineer at the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us, Simon.
Thank you for having me.
You gave a presentation this morning on concentrated solar power.
Yes.
Could you just summarise that for us, the key findings and the kind of the lessons that you were hoping to give to the audience on it?
Yes. So I was given a presentation about a project we did in Kuwait, the state of Kuwait on the Arabian Peninsula. And what we did there is Kuwait wants to, or has dedicated an area of 100 square kilometers where they want to build a 2 gigawatt renewable energy park, and they want to include solar energy and wind energy. They're not including hydro, obviously, because they're in the desert and there's just no potential for hydro. But they're looking into different solar technologies and different wind technologies. So what we did, we were subcontracted by the main consultant to develop a method to optimize the technology mix for that area for the 2 gigawatts. So we did this, we did the method, we did the optimization, and it turned out that we developed different scenarios with different focuses. One focusing on having a high peak load shaving capability in the park, one that produces a lot of energy, just a lot of energy over a year, and the third one was to produce energy with a low cost. So in the end we presented these three scenarios to the project owner in Kuwait, and they made a decision which scenario they wanted to go for, and then we implemented it a bit further and presented them the shares that we want to, or we would recommend them to build, which was in the end, I hope I have the figures in my mind, around 140 megawatts of wind, around, I think, a bit more than 1200 megawatts of CSP, and the rest being PV. The reason for CSP having such a high share were that there was just a lot of land available, so you can build large CSP plants. And of course, CSP gives you the opportunity to shift the energy production towards those hours where you need it the most, which is quite similar to South Africa, late in the evening. So when typically the sun is not there anymore and you need some kind of ability to shift your production away from the actual solar peak that you have on midday.
So on that project, what kind of storage solutions are they looking at?
CSP in general has different storage options, and the one that is most commonly implemented already in the existing CSP plants is a 2-tank molten salt storage system, where you have 2 tanks that both hold molten salt, so it's already liquid in both tanks, it doesn't freeze. That's the thing you want to avoid, because then you have just a big block of salt that you will have to melt again. But actually one is around at 230 degrees, and the other, which we call the cold tank actually, and the other one is the hot tank, which is at around 400 degrees. So you just store the thermal energy that is produced by your solar field in this storage system by heating the salt up from the cold to the hot temperature. And then once you need it, once you have to discharge the storage, you just produce steam from the hot salt by cooling it again. So because that's typical for CSP, that you have this conventional power block that runs a steam turbine, which is good for the grid and which is just has a long track record. I mean, steam turbines, they're around forever. Yes, since quite a long time. Yes. So that's the one that is most commercially implemented already, and there are some other storage options, direct storage of salt, and also some R&D stage storage systems. You can also store the steam directly, but that's a lot more complicated because you have to pressurize it. Typically, this is done for smaller capacities, as it's now the case in the Key Solar 1 plant. Abingoa is building it at Uppington in the Northern Cape.
Okay.
nowadays.
So how applicable do you think this technology is for Africa in terms of the costs and the suitability?
Well, as always, it depends, right? Africa is a big continent. It's probably not suitable everywhere. It could be built in general everywhere, but I mean in some regions like the Northern Cape, like South Africa, like Namibia, like the North African countries, you just have a lot more solar resource available. And there, I mean, CSP is really a good option to allow for systems being built that integrate storage. What was the second part of your question?
I suppose in terms of the cost, I mean,
Yeah,
CSP is known for being more costly than PV.
CSP is known to be more costly than PV, yeah, that's true. It's actually true.
Do you envisage that those costs, similar to PV, will start to lower?
They will lower because, I mean, it's just an economy of scales question. And also, I mean, the systems get more efficient, operation and maintenance gets more efficient. So the costs will come down for sure, but probably not at the same rate as PV. Because PV is more like, how do you say, when like CPUs or computer stuff, it gets just a lot. The wafers, the wafer production, it has the cost comes down quite quickly compared to CSP, which is more piping. I mentioned already the conventional power block. It's already quite developed. The subsystems are quite well engineered already, so there's not that much room for improvement. But I mean, through more efficient production technologies and more efficient operation and maintenance, the cost will come down. And because you can use CSP, as I mentioned, for peak load, it's a bit unfair to compare it directly to PV, because energy that you can just have on demand, just as spinning reserve in the grid as is now, it's just more valuable. So you can pay more money for it because it's a higher value to you as a grid.
So CSP's had some uptake in Europe, in other regions. Where do you see as the sort of the next wave of CSP?
Yeah, we had this wave in Spain, right?
Yeah.
Because there was this regulatory framework in place that encouraged the building of these 50 megawatt plants. We see steady growth in the US still. They're building power plants there, and they're building more and planning more. I think Arab countries, I mentioned Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, there's always, they have the money. So these countries are already, or they're also now trying to get away from the fossils and move towards renewables, and CSP is a good option there. And of course, South Africa, yes.
Yeah.
I mentioned the plants that are being built right now in the Northern Cape. There are more planned, and I think there will be a lot of development there. Yes.
Okay.
We're also, just to mention one more, Chile, which has the highest D&I resource in the world. They are also Abengoa. They're building, or they're planning to build a big plant there as well. So I think these are great markets here.
And what about for utilities that are looking at this technology and thinking, how are we going to incorporate this into our existing grid? What have been the big sort of stumbling blocks, and how are they overcoming them?
I mean, they're big systems with big investment. So it's not, PV is a bit more flexible size-wise, so you can just build a small system. If you don't have the money for a big system, you just build a small one. But I'm not a financial expert, so you really have to be careful with that. But in general, I mean, it's a big investment. There are big barriers for just getting it started in the beginning. And yes, that's the one I can think
What
of.
about the sort of interoperability of it with a grid?
As I mentioned, it's a steam turbine as it is in a fossil fuel plant or in a coal power plant. You have the storage, therefore it is possible to, if the storage is big enough, you can look at this as a conventional power plant that you can just use. So, I mean, the interface between grid and CSP should be pretty conventional, actually.
And when will CSP kind of reach grid parity, or has it already, would you say?
Well, that depends really what you understand for grid parity. I already mentioned the peak supply. If you're looking at gas power plants that are used right now for peak load or peak demand supply, they have I don't know about the cost in South Africa, but they have generally a higher cost than compared to base load power plants such as a coal-fired power plant. So if you look at CSP from that point, then you can, I'm pretty sure that we're either very close or already there in South Africa.
Okay.
And when you look at feed-in tariffs, for example, in the US, where power plants get feed-in tariffs around $13-14 cents, they are already quite cheap.
So at the institute, the Fraunhofer Institute, what can we expect research? Can we expect to see coming out there soon?
Okay, yeah. So basically, the Fraunhofer Institute is quite a big institute, the Fraunhofer Institute for Solar Energy Systems, because there are quite a number of Fraunhofer institutes all over Germany working on different topics in applied sciences. So we are the ones working on solar energy system, and our institute alone has over 1,200 staff, and we're working on a lot of different topics. A lot of people are working on PV. Quite some people are working on smart grids, on hydrogen systems, on storage systems, battery storage systems, on small distributed generation, centralized generation, and also CSP, and that's the group I'm working in. And yeah, besides component development and collector development, we develop mirrors and materials, and we do also yield analysis and yield calculation, and we simulate. We have in-house tools at our institute that allows us to simulate both the optical side of a CSP system, meaning the mirrors and how much sun is actually captured by the mirrors and then brought onto the receiver. And we can also simulate the thermal side, so the complete power plant.
Excellent. And where could people find, the findings of this research?
Quite some projects that we do are for government or for the European Union. So quite some of these results that we create within these projects are published. Of course, we are publishing our results as well on conferences and in papers. Of course, we also do industry projects where we have confidentiality, so we cannot disclose everything, obviously. Apart from that, you can just give us a call.
Great, well thanks for joining us, Simon, that's wonderful.
Thank you.
I'm Rose Bundock at African Utility Week. Thanks for watching.